The quiet shift. There is a moment in every life when the surface noise begins to feel thin. You may notice it when your thoughts feel crowded or when pressure builds in ways you can't describe. This episode begins with a simple idea. Real strength is found when the inner weight finally settles. You do not have to rise higher or push harder. You only need to let the mind settle the way loose soil settles after rain. This episode explores how dissolving the ego brings clarity and steadiness. The ego is not your enemy. It is simply a pattern built from old reactions. When it becomes loud, it narrows your world. This journey will invite you to see beyond that pattern. You will learn how quiet clarity grows naturally when you stop feeding the restless inner structure that tries to define you. What the ego really is. The ego can seem powerful, yet when you look closely, it behaves more like shifting sand in a dry landscape. It changes shape with every experience. It pulls stories from the past and projects expectations toward the future. The ego offers a sense of identity, but it often produces strain. It can tighten your reactions and make you feel as if every moment revolves around you. This is why small events can feel heavy. The ego narrows your attention. It convinces you that safety comes from control. When this happens, emotions rise quickly. Self-judgment becomes sharp. Comparison becomes natural. You may feel pushed around by thoughts that seem urgent, but are simply old patterns repeating themselves. Seeing this clearly is your first step. When you understand that the ego is only a shifting pattern and not your true foundation, space opens within you. That space becomes your strength. How the ego blocks peace. When the ego is active, reactions become tight. You may feel unsettled when someone disagrees with you or when plans change. You may feel disturbed by small moments that hold no real threat. The ego thrives on urgency. It wants recognition and certainty. Yet none of its demands provide lasting peace. Imagine a hillside where loose gravel constantly shifts under each step. Moving across it feels unstable. This is how life feels when the ego leads. Everything becomes personal. Every opinion feels like a verdict. Every small challenge becomes a test of worth. You may feel tension because the ground beneath your feet never feels firm. This instability does not come from life. It comes from identifying with the shifting gravel instead of the solid ground beneath it. When you stop placing your weight on what moves, the rest takes care of itself. If these ideas speak to you, consider subscribing so more people can explore this path with us. Deeper foundation exists. Across many wisdom traditions, a shared insight appears. Beneath the restless patterns of thought, there is a deeper layer in you that does not move. You can picture it like a calm lake beneath a thin layer of ripples. The ripples may seem intense, yet the water below remains steady. This steady layer is your deeper self. The ego forms on the surface through habit and pressure. It tries to protect you, but it often restricts you. Aldous Huxley described the resilient part of a person as the place where awareness can rest without fear. When you touch this deeper layer, life becomes simpler. You begin to act from clarity rather than reaction. The ego still appears, but it no longer defines your responses. Strength grows naturally when you learn to rest at this deeper level. The more you return to it, the more stable your life becomes. The perennial insight. Huxley's exploration of the perennial philosophy reveals a simple truth. The surface of experience is only one layer of reality. Beneath it lies a unified source from which all awareness rises. You may call it consciousness, presence, or simply the deeper ground of being. This insight appears in traditions across cultures. It does not require belief. It is discovered through direct awareness. You experience it whenever the mind becomes quiet and a calm openness spreads within you. Imagine standing at the edge of a wide valley. At first, you only notice the trees closest to you. Over time, your vision expands and the whole landscape becomes clear. This widening of awareness is the beginning of freedom from ego. When you shift from the narrow view to the broader one, you feel less trapped by thoughts. You begin to sense what lies beneath them. The dual nature. Each of us carries two layers of identity. The first is the smaller pattern, built from habits, memories, and protective reactions. This is the ego. It behaves like a patch of wind-shaped grass on a hillside. It moves quickly, shifts easily, and changes with every gust. The second layer is deeper. It is steady, grounded, and present. This is your true foundation. It does not defend itself or demand anything. When you are connected to this layer, your responses become gentle and firm. You feel less reactive because you no longer believe every passing thought. Many traditions describe this deeper layer as an eternal self. You may sense it during quiet moments or when your attention softens naturally. Returning to it again and again helps dissolve the grip of ego. Over time, the deeper layer becomes your center, and strength grows from that stillness. Letting the ego loosen. Letting go of the ego does not mean rejecting it. It simply means no longer gripping it as your identity. Imagine a cluster of dry leaves resting on still water. They drift gently, but never anchor. Your thoughts can behave in the same way. When you observe them without clinging, they move more freely. The ego begins to soften when you stop feeding its urgency. You may notice moments when it tries to control outcomes or demand attention. When this happens, pause. Notice the pattern without resisting it. Each time you observe without tightening, the old structure loses its strength. This process is gentle. Nothing forceful is required. You dissolve ego by seeing it clearly, not by fighting it. Over time, a quiet spaciousness grows. This spaciousness becomes the environment where strength, calm, and clarity naturally rise. The role of contemplation. Contemplation is the practice of settling the mind so awareness can widen. You do not need complex methods, you only need consistent moments of quiet. Picture a forest path where fallen branches slowly clear after a soft wind. Visibility improves without effort. Contemplation works the same way. When you sit in stillness, the clutter of thought clears naturally. The ego may rise at first, offering unfinished tasks, old memories, or imagined worries. Your role is not to chase these thoughts. You simply notice them and return to the present moment. Breath awareness helps. Gentle attention to the rhythm of breathing brings the mind into steadiness. Modern research supports this. When awareness settles, activity in the regions linked to ego-based thinking decreases. You begin to sense the deeper layer beneath your thoughts. Contemplation becomes a doorway to strength. Humility as strength. Humility dissolves ego because it loosens the belief that you must always be right. Humility is not weakness, it is clear sight. Imagine standing on firm earth with no need to climb higher. From this place, you can see more. When you admit you do not have every answer, the mind relaxes. Curiosity returns. The ego resists humility because it fears loss of status. Yet, when humility grows, tension fades. You begin to listen more than you speak. You become open to learning. Conversations become lighter. Difficult moments lose their sting. Try a simple practice. Spend a day entering each interaction with the intention to understand rather than respond. Notice the internal pull to interrupt or correct. That pull is the ego tightening. When you let it soften, connection becomes easier. Strength arises from this gentle openness. Service weakens the ego. Acts of service shift attention away from ego because service places your awareness on the broader landscape of life. Imagine tending a small patch of soil. Your focus moves from yourself to what you are nourishing. Service works in the same way. When you offer help without seeking recognition, the ego becomes quiet. It has no role in those moments. A simple gesture can create this shift. Holding a door, offering a calm word, or helping someone without expecting thanks builds a sense of quiet alignment. You may feel lighter afterward. This lightness comes from acting without ego. Huxley viewed this as part of self-abnegation. It is not self-denial. It is clear alignment with something deeper. Service reminds you that you are part of a wider field of life. That belonging weakens the grip of ego. Seeing thoughts clearly. Thoughts appear quickly, but they do not define you. You can imagine them like the soft movement of tall reeds near a river. They sway, but the ground beneath remains steady. When you identify with thoughts, the ego grows strong. When you observe thoughts, the ego loosens. A simple shift in language helps. Instead of saying, "I am stressed," say, "There is stress arising." Instead of, "I am angry," try, "There is anger present." This creates distance. You become the observer instead of the reaction. This practice builds emotional clarity. It helps you respond rather than react. You no longer cling to every passing thought. Over time, your inner landscape becomes calmer. The reeds may move, but you stand firm on the ground that supports them. This is strength born from awareness. The nature of change. Impermanence is a truth that dissolves ego gently. Everything shifts, everything moves. Imagine the slow movement of light through a valley across the day. Nothing remains the same. The ego resists this. It wants certainty and control. It wants events, relationships, and outcomes to fit fixed expectations. When reality changes, the ego tightens. This creates frustration and anxiety. Accepting impermanence does not mean giving up. It means moving with life instead of resisting it. When you accept change as natural, the pressure to control everything softens. You begin to adapt more easily. A canceled plan becomes an open space. A difficult moment becomes a lesson. A setback becomes one step in a larger rhythm. When you align with the movement of life, the ego has less space to anchor itself. Peace grows naturally. Returning to presence. Presence dissolves ego because presence anchors you in what is real. Picture standing among steady stones in a quiet field. Each stone is unmoved by passing weather. When you ground yourself in the present moment, awareness becomes like those stones. Thoughts may come and go, but you remain steady. Presence does not require silence or solitude. It requires attention. You can return to presence while walking, working, or resting. Notice simple details: the texture of your breath, the movement of your body, the stillness beneath your thoughts. The ego cannot dominate when you are grounded in presence. It relies on past stories and future fears. presence removes its fuel. Over time, returning to presence becomes natural. It becomes the place where you gather strength. Here, the deeper self becomes clear. Inner work as daily practice. Dissolving ego is not a single moment. It is a steady practice, like watching a young tree strengthen over many seasons. You return to awareness again and again. Some days feel clear, others feel tangled. Both are part of the path. You practice humility. You practice presence. You practice letting go of roles and labels. These small returns create deep change. You may still feel emotion. You may still react at times. Yet the return becomes faster. The grip becomes weaker. With daily practice, you begin to sense the deeper layer more often. This is where strength grows. This is where calm settles. This is where clarity appears. If these ideas help you grow, consider joining the community by subscribing. The quiet strength within. As ego dissolves, strength rises from a different place. It is not the strength of control or dominance. It is the steadiness of deep roots beneath a hillside. Storms may come, winds may move the surface, yet the root system holds firm. When your identity shifts from the ego to the deeper self, challenges feel lighter. You respond instead of react. You release tension instead of gripping it. You live from clarity rather than fear. This strength cannot be taken from you because it does not depend on achievement, opinion, or recognition. It comes from alignment with what is stable within you. This is the strength that endures. Real resilience. Resilience grows when you stop fighting the natural movement of life. Imagine a riverbank where stones remain steady even as water flows past them. Strength is found in becoming like those stones. The ego fears change. It demands that life follow its script. When life shifts, fear rises. When ego loosens, resilience grows. You become more flexible. You adapt with less resistance. You remain clear even in uncertainty. Challenges still appear, but you no longer interpret them as threats to your identity. This shift is profound. It opens space for growth. It helps you respond with wisdom rather than fear. Resilience becomes natural, a life guided by awareness. When ego dissolves, awareness guides your choices. You begin to sense direction the way you sense a gentle current beneath shallow water. You no longer force outcomes. You look carefully, you listen, you follow what feels steady, clear, and aligned. This does not make life passive, it makes life intentional. Decisions become lighter. You stop searching for approval. You stop defending outdated roles. Awareness brings calm confidence. It helps you recognize when to act and when to wait. It helps you move through difficulty without losing your center. This way of living makes every moment more grounded. Freedom from inner tension. As ego dissolves, inner tension fades. Fear softens. Judgment weakens. Your world becomes less sharp and more spacious. Imagine walking through tall grass where each blade bends without breaking. You move more gently. You speak more clearly. You feel more balanced. Conflict still appears, yet it does not disturb you as deeply. You understand that others also carry their own patterns and struggles. This brings compassion. The ego tightens. Awareness softens. With practice, softening becomes your natural response. This is freedom from inner conflict. This is the beginning of deep peace. Living without the old pattern. When the ego no longer leads, your life gains a calmer rhythm. You do not lose ambition or drive. You simply stop tying your worth to outcomes. You act from presence rather than fear. This creates a different type of success. You enjoy progress without attachment. You handle setbacks without collapse. Life becomes less about controlling outcomes and more about moving with clarity. Imagine a hillside path where each step feels grounded and deliberate. You no longer rush. You no longer defend. You simply walk with awareness. The deeper self becomes your guide. This is the beginning of a new kind of freedom. The path ahead. Your journey does not end with dissolving the ego. It begins there. When you stop identifying with the restless patterns of thought, your inner landscape opens. You begin to sense the depth beneath your experiences. You feel anchored in something steady. Imagine the slow, natural widening of daylight across a quiet valley. Clarity spreads gradually. Strength rises gently. The ego may visit, but it no longer defines you. Each day becomes an opportunity to return to presence, humility, and calm awareness. If this path supports your growth, consider joining us so we can walk it together. Allow tomorrow to arrive with quiet purpose. You do not need to force anything. You only need to stay grounded in the deeper layer within you. That is where strength lives. That is where peace grows.